To start off with, I would like to call upon Shivani Singh from Nazara for a talk titled Subscription Gaming Monetizing the Long Game. Shivani, over to you.
Yeah, can you put the slides on? The slides. Okay. Awesome. Hi everyone. I thought, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I'm being forced to move around. I'll move around during the talk. So I thought it's the first session and really sort of happy to see such a full crowd here. Thriving ecosystem here at Kolkata, it seems. So I'm Shivani. I work in the corporate development team at Nazara. I primarily look at investments and also strategy for our kids segment. And today we'd be discussing subscription based monetization, right? And I think this is something that I see very, very less in Indian developers when they come to pitch to us. That is a factor of monetization that generally goes missing. And primarily the reason for that is that we are building games for the Indian audience. Whereas if you take a more broader perspective, subscription based pricing comes in very, very handy. So one question before I start, right, is how many of you actually have a game live in the market, are thinking or in the process of, kicking a game off live in the market? How many are you at that stage? Okay, two. Um, awesome, three. Some of you. Okay, one by one. Are you guys hesitating like you're not sure? Okay, cool. So, okay, four, five of you. And what's the monetization strategy that you're thinking for your game? Will you keep it IAP based? Will you keep it subscription based? Subscription. Okay, and what sort of a product you're building? Okay. Okay, got it. What about you? Got it. So, I mean, the sort of monetization model you adopt, it's entirely dependent on the nature of game as well, right? So, just to sort of progress, um, what sort of monetization models you can have in a game? So, broadly, you would have heard about two segmentation, right? One is in app purchases and one is ad supported, or you could have a culmination of both. Now, when you take in app purchases, there are further sort of segmentations in it. One is that you directly sort of pay for an app and then you get to play it. The other is that there are certain in-app assets that you can buy in the game. Then is a freemium model wherein you sort of download a game and then play it a bit, and then maybe let's say you want some superpowers or some additional assets, you can pay for that, right? And then is the subscription part of it. Subscription part is that, um, for example, a lot of you would have played those games where there are VIP accesses, VIP passes, special passes, right? That's also an element of subscription. For our games specifically, which are Kidopia and Animal Jam, approximately 3 million MAUs for both of the games in the US, subscription becomes a key portion. So, in games where your customer is fairly loyal, they are long, the customer LTV is fairly, for a long period of time, subscription makes a lot of sense. And you see that generally in customers, for example, women based customers. So, in case you're thinking of building a puzzle game, there you have a lot of women, right? And they play the game. The lifetime of the customer is very, very large. So, in that sense, subscription makes a lot of sense. And even in kids' game, the kid stays around playing the game for approximately a year or so if the game is good, and then subscription makes a lot of sense. So for games where the customer longevity is fairly high, subscription would make the most sense, or you can have a mix and match also. So one of our game, Wildworks, it's a game that has been running since the last 10 years or so, Animal Jam, and still 3 million MAUs and approximately 46 to 50% monthly revenue that we get is from subscription. The rest is from IAPs. So we try to monetize from our loyal customers and provide them benefits. So these are the sort of monetization models. So, what could be the advantages of having a subscription model, right? One thing that developers or any sort of gaming company really struggles with is assuring that monthly what is the revenue that I'll get. So, you might build a game, you might launch it, but then when you go to, let's say, investors, or even when you're building your own pipeline, even you aren't sure that what's the revenue that I'll get next month, next to next month, because your player sort of just the certainty that these many players would log in, these many players would sort of pay is very, very low. When you do a subscription model, at least the cash flow is assured to you. So, in any case of fundraise, in any case of just even building your own pipeline and having a budgeting, subscription makes a lot of sense because it's recurring revenue. So, if a 3 month subscription, 4 month subscription, 6 month subscription, you can model your finances really, really well. The other thing is that you have a loyal customer base, so it's also sort of an evidence that if a certain bunch of customers are paying, it means that they're enjoying your product, so it's an evidence that your product is performing. And then there is more predictability. So if these many customers are there and they'll be there every month, then I need to build my assets or build my launches or schedule everything according to those set of, let's say, 10-15% customers who are coming and paying, right, every month, and that's assured. So in general sense, I think the best part about subscription is that you have a fairly assured cash flow. Your customer is sticky, which is a great evidence of the performance of your product. And then there is recurring revenue. What are the challenges? Now, if I'm paying you $4-5 every month, I would expect that you're giving me some great value from that product. Which generally, and if that doesn't happen, then there's a loyal product, loyal customer who will mostly churn out. So you have to be very sort of disciplined and even creative with your content updates, because given the customer is paying every month, the expectation of the product becomes very high. So let's say in both our apps, which is Wildworks and Kidopia, there would be launches scheduled every month. Like every month there would be a new sort of a launch which we have to device, just so that the customer sticks around and keeps on playing the game. We want to minimize the churn because we want to assure that revenue keeps on coming. So it's not like you build a game and you launch it and then you retire and think, wow, the money will keep on coming. It doesn't happen in a subscription business like that. The CAC becomes very high because you're trying to convert a customer who is trying to pay. Why CAC becomes high? It's a high paying customer. The customer will stick around for an year and a half, and that means that you will have significant return that you can get from them, but then you will have to invest money. How the CAC is compensated is because the LTV of the customer is also very high. Are you guys familiar with terms like CAC, LTV, cash flow? I didn't check that. How many of you are familiar with like terms? Okay, so I'll just break it down for you. CAC is customer acquisition costs, right? So for example, if I'm building a game and if I'm launching it, then I have to spend some money in acquiring customers, which could be through marketing, which could be through just paying certain influencers. You can do it in a bunch of ways, right? So every app or every product that you launch will have a CAC. That CAC can be zero as well because it's a fairly organic product, spreads like wildfire, so there is no CAC. But generally in gaming, you will see a customer acquisition cost. So I'll spend, let's say, upfront $40 to acquire one paying customer. But why I'll spend $40? Because maybe in a year or a year and a half timeline, I'll get $80-90 in return from that customer as well, right? So it makes sense spending that money. And that is why when you launch a game, a lot of us think that there is a lot of virality factor. There's a lot of it'll spread like wildfire. It's a game, it's a very cool game. Because the app ecosystem in general is so sort of saturated, marketing plays a very, very significant role. So you will have to end up spending money. So the money you spend to acquire customer is CAC. When that CAC is high, it means that you're trying to either your marketing is inefficient, that could be one, but let's say your marketing is efficient. So why then that CAC is high? Because you're targeting to acquire a very particular breed of customer who's very high paying. And I'll do that because in subscription based businesses, the LTV, which is the lifetime value of the customer, would also be high, right? So let's say I keep on coming to the game and I keep on spending $2 every month. Now I play that game for, let's say, 2 years, right? So it means that I've basically spent $48 in that game. So that's the LTV of the customer. Cash flow is the money I'm making in the game. So broadly, that's that. So these are the advantages and the challenges of subscription based games. So now let's look at the app subscription ecosystem, right? Like you will develop a game, you will publish it, you will spend money on marketing, then the user will pay to App Store, and then you will have to pay then the App Store will pay you. So here why subscription makes a lot of sense and why it's lucrative is because even Google and Apple recognize that if a customer is paying, right, and next year also they keep on paying, then they'll reduce your fees from 30 to 15%. So that's a pretty big incentive, because generally, let's say any IAPs where there is no sort of loyalty factor into play, the app stores will charge you 30%. So that's a significant cut directly on your top line. But if it's a subscription based model and you have customers who keep on coming back, then your fees will be reduced by 15%. So that is why it makes a lot of sense to have longer LTV games, introduce subscription based models. What could be the different pricing strategies that you can take? And these are a bunch of like jargons, but basically think about it in the sense that you are providing value to a certain customer. Then how do you identify what sort of value or what's the nature of the value that you're providing to the customer and how you can monetize it, right? So for example, let's say you're building a hyper casual game and the value that you're providing to your customer is maybe 1 day of entertainment, right? So how can you derive maximum value out of the customer? You will ask me, okay, pay for my hyper casual game. I'll be like, are you kidding me? Like, I played this game for like an hour. Why the hell should I pay you, right? Like, that doesn't work like that. But if you will tell me I'll deliver you 2 hours of entertainment, which will you watch, let's say, 5 ads? So then I'm fine with it, because I'll install the app, I'll watch the ads, and then I'll uninstall it. But in that period, I've gained maximum value, right? Or let's say it's a kids game like ours, for example, where the customer stays on for 1.5 years or so. I'll be like, I've built a lot of modules for you. I'm creating this safe ecosystem where your kid is safe, like from any sort of like abuse or whatever. So, and I'll push creative content every now and then. So can you pay me $4 for it every month? And the parent would be like, okay, that's a no-brainer for me, because the kid is actually addicted to the product. It's a great product. So why can't I pay $4-5? It's like a no-brainer for me. So it depends on like what sort of value you're delivering to the customer and then what sort of monetization strategy you can take. A lot of them are derived from SaaS-based pricing models. So if you take a tiered-based pricing in which you segment your customers into different cohorts and then say what sort of pricing would work for what cohort. So let's say there's a loyal user who keeps on playing the game every day for like 30-35 minutes or so. Then you'll say, hey, do you want to buy a VIP pass? So that sort of pricing would work. There's a customer who logs in, plays for let's say 2-3 days. You will say, hey, do you want to buy special assets that can enhance your gameplay? There's a customer who probably never plays, so you bombard them with ads probably to maximize the value. So different sort of pricing model can work, and I can go over it, but I think most value will be delivered on how to do user acquisition. Now, if you are planning to become a game developer, launch a game, this is a very key factor, because of which a lot of games sadly do not get monetized and don't get any visibility at all. And I see this a lot as an investor in the Indian ecosystem. Some of you build great products, but a lot of you have probably very less idea about how to get that game a lot of visibility, right? So user acquisition is a key part. If you look at the profit and loss statement of a game developer, what you will see is that let's say you make 10 rupees, right? 30% of that gets deducted upfront. So 3 rupees is gone. You are left with 7 rupees. After 7 rupees, on a baseline case, you will end up spending 20 to 40 rupees in just UA. So that's 2 to 4 rupees again. Then is your own development cost. Now 2 to 4 rupees is when you do effective UA, when probably your UA is somewhat good, like you are actually doing a good job. in general cases, this UA is almost so high that you never make profits out of it, which would be the case for almost all the Indian like apps that you would have seen, right? Like that ended up being the case. The CAC was so high that they never ended up making money. So the CAC would be probably 11 rupees and you're making 10 rupees. And that is what will happen when you don't do effective user acquisition. So while you're building a great product, user acquisition is something that I feel is heavily neglected and is something that you should really pay a lot of focus on. So let's say I'm a game developer, I'm launching an app. What is the thing I need to take care of? Like, right? So first, very simple thing that you can do is app store optimization. Very, very ignored, but this is the simple thing that I will try to do ASO and I'll try to do is as effectively as possible, right? Once that is sorted, then I'll go to experimenting with different channels. Now I am launching a new app. What is the sort of campaigns or what is the sort of uh, funnel for campaigns I should have? The first sort of campaigning that you should do is installation based campaigns. You just want to figure out that whether there is a good enough market for it, whether there are people who are installing the app or not, right? Then the second sort of campaign that you want to do is driven towards in-app events. After installation, are they participating in playing different modules of the game or not? Are they taking trials or not? Are they, experimenting with the game, playing, sticking around in the app or not? Inviting their friends or not? There could be different in-app events that you can set. The third would be ROAS based campaigns. Now that I have established that there's a market, I'm getting installations, users are engaging with the app, then I'll try to do ROAS. What is ROAS? Return on ad spend. Return on ad spend means that can I make money from the customer? The customer is sticking around playing the game, but am I even making enough money from the customer? Then you will start to do ROAS based campaigns, right? And for that, you will need different sort of ad creatives. So you can do A/B testing of your ad creatives. You can target a particular cohort. You can play around a bunch with it. So user acquisition is a key part, and I think in subscription app it becomes even more critical because the user that you're trying to monetize, you're trying for the fact that they'll have a very high lifetime value, and then your CACs would also be high. So we'll need a lot more experimentation compared to conventional apps. What are the metrics to track? Okay, so given that a lot of you are in probably very nascent stages of building the product or have built the product, another big challenge that I sort of see as an investor is the fact that there is very loose monitoring of the data on your games, right? I don't know. For the people who said that they are in the process of building a game or have built the game, what sort of metrics do you guys monitor, right? Like, okay, got it. Yeah.
I mean, we will usually see cost per clicks, right? And user acquisition and retention. Day one retention to day three.
Got
That's
it.
mostly it.
Okay. Yeah. So I think one thing that you need to be really sort of mindful about is the more data you have, and that sort of goes missing in a lot of new Indian game developers, is the fact that you don't have a very robust data system. You think that, you function as a creative, and that's a beautiful, wonderful thing. But you also need to function as an analyst when you're working in gaming. So an analyst would look at the data and then make decisions based on the data, right? So when you're building a subscription product, what are the sort of metrics that you need to track, right, on a very regular basis? So one is the fact that there are installations that I'm getting, then probably I have trials. So what is the conversion rate to trials? That'll tell me what is the propensity of a customer to go and probably even think of paying for the app, right? And then there would be factor from trials to probably subscribers. So these are your conversion metrics that you should be tracking in general for any product. Like even if it's, let's say, not a subscription product, if you are getting new installations every month, right, then you should track how many from that actually became paying customers. So that's a more cohort based analysis. And then you can look at different cohorts and you can divide them in different segments. Like you can do an A/B testing of it just to figure out what actions did you take in the game that actually resulted in any sort of monetization or not, right? The other thing is LTV, which I think I already discussed. Retention is another one. So basically retention means that, let's say I installed an app. for how long or what percentage of those customers keep on playing the app. So for example, 100 customers or 100 players install the app on day one, right? Let's say 50% of them uninstall the app. So your D1 retention would be 50%. So that's what retention means. Why retention is an important metric is because if you have a higher retention, then you can probably think of building a subscription based product, because that is when you're delivering most value to your customer. What is ARPU? Is average revenue per user, and then cohorting. So given the audience, I think the only thing probably that you guys should focus on right now is cohorting of user for playtesting, right? So if let's say you're building a game, can you cohort? Cohort means that, let's say, here in this audience there's a cohort of audience that is game developer or who have launched the game. There's a cohort of audience who are students, right? There's probably a cohort of audience who are investors or who are already established in the industry. So cohort basically means segmentation of users into different categories. Why you should segment the users is basically because different users will have different sort of action points and incentives. So you can design the pricing strategy based on the cohorting of user that you do. So given a lot of you are probably students here, I would recommend that when you're play testing, try to cohort the user and figure out who your user is actually, and then what sort of monetization strategy that you can take. um, this is just a demonstration of what are the metrics and how can you track them in a baseline game. um, but given a lot of you have already not built the game, I think it might not be the best way to discuss. So basically, certain things in a subscription based game that you should be mindful of is the LTV, is the CAC, is the RPU, and is the churn. So these are the 3-4 metrics that you should be sort of concerned about for your subscription based customers. What is the future of subscription? So I can tell you this one thing very, very blatantly, that while people might start experimenting and might be in different stages of monetization, a lot of game developers keep on thinking that what is the way I can improve the LTV of the customer. That is one key parameter, right? For a lot of casual games, for a lot of even like more hardcore sort of games where you expect the customer to stick around for a long time, optimization of LTV is key. And one good way to optimize LTV is subscription, is selling VIP passes, is selling like special access passes, because that is the way the customer will stick around for a more long period of time. So while we think that it's still a growing market, but given that approximately out of the $200 billion approximate gaming market, 100 billion of that comes from mobile gaming. 30% of that is right now attributed to subscription. So that number is growing. So in the initial stages, you will experiment with IAPs, you will experiment with ads, and then eventually you will start figuring out that how do I move to a more subscription based pricing model. So this market is growing, and a lot of companies that we talk to, they are trying to shift their monetization model to subscription. So let's say there's a paying customer, there's a propensity to pay, I've already analyzed that, can I convert that customer to a subscriber? I think that is the mindset that is coming into picture there. So yeah, I think broadly that's it about the subscription market. I'm happy to take any questions. I know a lot of you are fairly early in your journey, so I'm open to taking any sort of questions, even about investments or anything else, maybe beyond the talk that you might want to ask. Yeah.
Mic there. Give me a mic. My mic there.
Hi. Just sort of, I guess, one or two questions middled into one, which is how much more beneficial would you say for a small indie developer to opt for a subscription-based model as opposed to a freemium or an AdSense model, given that a subscription model would definitely require, as you said, more CAC, so more upfront costs, and a longer wait period on the returns, and you would have to have capital to burn to wait for that period. And on a smaller scale, you definitely, unless you have large amounts of investment and therefore lose market share. For an indie game developer, not for, and as well as the fact that a lot of the developers generally end up making one game or two games, and subscription model generally, as I see, I'm not the best educated on it, but work better for platforms that host multiple different IPs or give better benefit for the client that is able to get different types of entertainment per month for their money.
Okay, so let me answer that. So you're a small indie developer, right? Let's take a more generalized outlook to it. You have a game. The first thing that you want to do is get more audience to it, just so that you can analyze it. If you start keeping your app behind a paywall, you're not gonna get anyone to play it, right? Like, there is no value. So the way to start, and I think subscription mostly kicks in after you have some evidence that the game will perform. Either you do it initially, you are established developer or something, you have a lot of evidence that people will pay for the game, that is a different thing. But for a small indie developer, you don't have those sort of like, luxuries, you don't have those sort of user data points. So you will keep it freemium for some time, right? You will see if people are actually playing the game or installing the game or not. Try to do as much organic acquisition as you can, right? After you have established that there are people who are playing the game, then you will test for retention. Then you will try to figure out if the retention metrics are high, if the people keep on coming and playing the game again, right? So then after you have established that there is a high retention, can you start offering them trials? Can you just test out on a particular segment of cohorts that you will start offering trials? If there is a high conversion of trial, let's say your trial matrix hits 50-60% or something, then it makes a lot of sense, right? Because okay, the trial is hitting, can I offer them subscription? Then probably to a select cohort of customer, you will start offering subscription. So it doesn't come in early in the initial stages. So even for Kidopia, which is I think one of the most successful kids apps out there, right? They didn't start off with subscription upfront. It was eventually when they started seeing those sort of evidence matrix that they decided subscription is a good model. The second thing I'll keep in mind is this is a more generalized sort of overview, right? But there could be second level, which is what is the sort of game that you're building and what is the sort of monetization model your audience is used to. So in a kids game, we know that kids and parents are used to subscription based model. So that is the eventual sort of pricing structure we would want to take. But let's say if it's a hyper casual game, now you keep subscription, I don't know who's gonna pay, right? If it's a hybrid casual model, then maybe in certain period of time, if the retention is performing, you offer VIP passes for short period of time, not for like 12 months, 6 months or whatever. So it depends on the sort of game that you're building and also what is the monetization model your audience is used to. But initially, I wouldn't recommend keeping your game behind a paywall unless you have a lot of organic reach already through which you can get your games installed and tested. I hope that
Thanks.
answers.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Yeah, one question there. Sorry. Last, one more question and then we're done. Yeah.
Good morning, ma'am. And first of all, thank you for sharing such high-value insights of monetization. I would want to ask that, is it more sensible for an indie developer to go for individual subscriptions or rather go for merged, means a larger platform for subscription like Google Play Pass or merging with Netflix, because they are also providing a platform for gaming. And that's also a subscription model, but that's not directly managed by the developer himself. So I would like to know which one is better.
I think it's a great way to sort of just because the audience already has a pass. So for example, if you have a niche game or you have a limited game, it's a very, artsy game, which the audience will play, but there'll still be a niche audience for it, but you want to make money out of it as well. So now if I try to backtrack, it's a limited audience game. Like I know it won't have probably 10 million or 20 million mouse. That's never going to happen for that game. But that 1 or 500K people who play the game will be loyal. In that sense, I would think, yeah, a play pass makes a lot of sense. Because, of course, I have a small audience, but I can monetize very well from it, right? So then I'll keep it. But let's say if it's a game that has potential to go like viral, there's a virality factor to it, I would test it before going for that just upfront, right? So for example, a lot of times when I talk to game developers and they have a very solid game, they have a game with even an IP involved, like think of an IP for the Disney, like an IP integration with Disney or whatever, right? And then they think that, hey, why don't I put it on Apple Arcade? And then I think you are capping your own monetization potential, because if you know that there could be a high reach for that game, there's nothing stopping you from going back. Like there's nothing saying like 1 year later after you have play tested and it's not performing that I can't go back. You can do the same thing that you are already planning to do 1 year before. But if it's a niche audience, I think it makes a lot of sense. Hope that answers.
Thank you.
Hello. Okay, so my question was that how would I balance the innovation along with the game design?
Wow, that's a very meta question. Even for I like meta discussions, but okay. Let's break it down. What are you actually like struggling with?
I'm actually designing various elements inside the game, such as the UI designing and different parts inside the game that the player will see and interact with, such as the inventory and everything else, along with the overlays for the guns if there are in the game. So because of this, sometimes the player does not think that this is a good enough looking game to play. So they play it for 1 or 2 hours and then they just uninstall it and completely forget about it. So what is the thing that we will do in order to, in the design factor, that will make the player stick to the game?
Okay. So your player is uninstalling the game
Yes.
like within an hour, right?
Yeah, within an hour or two of playing, just trying out the game and deleting it because he does not think that the game looks good enough in terms of UI, not the graphics.
But like, how did you validate that they are uninstalling it? Because you think the game mechanics are really bang on, but probably it doesn't look good. That's your hypothesis. Did you test it out?
The thing is that after completing the project, I had it given for free to a Discord server. There were a few 100 or 200 people, and I called them to just play it, test it, give me feedbacks on it. They said that after playing the game, we have played so many games in our lives. After playing all the games, when I'm playing this one, so it does not give me the same feeling, does not give me the same enjoyment that I get from playing the other games, though it's an FPS game. There are not much elements, there are not much particles, there are not much graphics in that factor. In the design UI, such as the inventory, the designing of the guns, and those factors.
Okay, so you basically do have feedback from your customers.
Yes.
Is there a constraint in incorporating that feedback?
I think so, yes.
What is the constraint?
I don't
Constraint, like, what are the difficulties you're facing in just like
in the designing
incorporating them?
department, ma'am. In designing the various elements of the game.
Are you like a single person team? Do you have a team?
I was originally a graphics designer, and then I turned on to Blender for 3D designing for elements inside, and in that factor I'm designing a few things. So in that process I'm getting some kind of issues because the thing is not looking good enough. I am having question. Yes.
Got it. So see, like I have a very surface level overview of your problem. But what I can see is that you're probably trying to handle a lot of things on your own, right? But you're doing some things right. Like at least you're doing play testing. At least you're trying to get feedback. At least you're trying to incorporate it as well. What would be a more logical thing? You try to find 2-3 like-minded people who can come and support you in that project, right? That way you will be able to handle design and innovation, I guess. Because at least you will have a team that can support you. And then you can talk to your users, get more feedback, and build a better game instead of doing everything on your own. So I'll initially try to focus my energy on getting more users if I have the time and bandwidth to do that. Otherwise, you will be sort of stressed by doing everything on your own when you will be never able to build a great game, I guess.
Thank you. But to answer your question, there are a lot of like veterans here in the room, and I would just say like you're here the whole day. Show your games to them. You'll get a bunch of feedback. The people from all over India as well, so you can just like get a whole lot of feedback from different people in the room.
Cool, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Shivani. That was
everyone.
really
Yeah.
good session.
And sorry, this was a bit off from where the stage of life where you guys are at, but hopefully you derived some value from it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. one of the ideas of doing talks like this at the developer day was while we want to focus on upskilling developers, we also wanted to start creating business sense because we've seen a lot of developers are very passionate about building products and games and then get frustrated when they're not able to monetize the game. And in countries like ours, within the family, will ask you, kya kar raha hai? Right? And then that becomes another problem to solve. So we just thought a lot of our focus should also be on on giving insights on business monetization to developers who are even getting into the industry. Thank you, Shivani. It was a really, really cool talk.